Well, if there's several choices that we would hope for, then we have a choice. And we might go for that which we hope for the most, times the probability of achieving it. And whichever gives the greater, we go for that. So the unlikely has to be very hoped for to be chosen to offset the low probability of achieving it. Some things we dread, and we might therefore hope to avoid such. That would also therefore be on our choice list. If there's no hope of avoiding some things that we don't like, well, we just put up with them. If we can't affect their future, we may still hope that they, of course, don't happen. Or we may hope that they're a blessing in some way to offset the dread of it happening. A choice doesn't necessarily mean they're mutually exclusive. So I may have several things in mind, none of which excludes the others, any of the others. And so I choose to do them all, if I have the resources to do such. If I haven't, I allocate on the grounds of which is going to bring the highest probable expected value of my choice. Possible choices I could make, combinations and so on. So it's not that choice is determining the outcome, it's the values I put on the outcomes of such choice times their probability that determines whether they're going to be chosen or not, especially if it's at the cost of some other choice. Then I'm weighing which of the two give the greater return. That's the rational approach of the consumer in economics. He's maximizing his utility, whatever the gain is to him, of the choices that he makes. We don't argue whether he's free to choose, except we do argue that his choice not be imposed upon by something outside of his desires and expectations. That he only has his legitimate power, not stolen by some evil monopolist giving him bad choices. So if I'm addicted to something, then I'm only free within that constraint, which might be a very low level of welfare as a consequence. I might want to be free from the constraint, by which I probably mean the harm that it does in the longer run for the temporary gain in the relief of giving way to the addiction. So society might leave me to be free to do it. I mean, for argument's sake, something like marijuana or smoking. But I am not experiencing, of course, the freedom from it Similarly, I may be free to make my own choice, but not free of my ignorance that's wrecking my ability to decide what would otherwise be in my best interest if I only understood it. It's not that we seek freedom, we seek welfare, and a welfare that is defined to include such things as the experience of creativity and fellowship, joy and peace, health, etc. What sort of freedoms and what sorts of constraints helping that regard should rationally be valued by us, but may not be because of some misunderstanding or addiction. And the misunderstanding and addiction may be being deliberately cultivated by some outside force, people, even governments and so on, businesses, advertising, you name it. I seek the level of constraint upon such freedoms appropriate to me maximizing my welfare, where welfare includes spiritual, emotional, physical, whatever gains that bring, in fact, that which is truly valued: joy, peace, health, extending into the future, however far we're preoccupied with. There's a strange irrationality that the future is not so important as the present to me, which is important if I need to remain alive to enjoy the future. I must give priority to the present in some basic sense. I can't choose to die now if the future is then terminated as well, which death typically is understood to mean, of course, though it's complicated by different religious views of afterlife. It's not clear to us typically how to handle our present value of what future welfare will mean to us. As some people feel there should be a zero discount on all time periods that will be or can be experienced, which, if we're thinking in terms of an eternal life, then I'm seeking a consumption pattern, if you like, a welfare pattern, I think, that is constant throughout time. Unless we suffer some relativity and that such would be boring to us. And in fact a nightmare in that case if it just went on indefinitely. Well, I turn on it and say, it's not relevant to me, for I'm not trusting in my conception of the future, but that of an eternal, wonderful God who gets things right. Therefore my trust is in Him. I don't so much have to optimize. Well, you might say, but rather obey. But obey is such an emotive word. I think I want to say rather benefit from the love of such and the understanding of the love of such a wonderful God and what that infers about our behaviour. Obedience, if you like, but benefiting from advice that we get of what a God would ideally want of us to bless us and all others. That's the sort of foundation of moral principle that avoids the problem of us solving the decision-making problem that has to wrestle with uncertainty and ignorance. And most happily so, if taken in assurance of the benevolence and loveliness of such God. And in that sense, you see, I think it's consistent with my thesis that you can only love your God, the one that has your values, because that's by definition what you value. You can't love what you don't value. You just become alienated by trying to press yourself to conform to such. It is written, John 17. Oh, well, yes, this is life eternal, to know thee, the only true God. And from the point of view of the Jesus story, Jesus Christ whom thou hast sent. Similarly, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, and also that you shall be free indeed, if you know the truth. But of course it has to be on the menu and chosen by you, because it is consistent with, in harmony with, your values. And it may not be at the minute, in which case you must experience consequence of your values that ideally teach you the correct way, and you adjust accordingly. Not keep battling to make the same mistake. Quite simply, don't keep doing that which causes you a lot of problems. I'm come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Life eternal at that. That seems to be the goal, almost by definition, of the valid goal. It's hard to find someone who doesn't want to do that. And perhaps they don't last very long in this world, should they remain of that state of mind. It's what we call depression, isn't it? Discouragement. A very sad case. We need hope. Hope comes of awareness of all that is good around you, both to you and to all life. Whatsoever's good, think on these things. Your assurance and your hope, your joy and your peace, love and understanding, compassion, a whole heap of things follow accordingly. It may not be the only key to heaven, but it seems to be a very useful one. And perhaps, as far as I can see, all that you need, because everything else follows accordingly. Your trust in God escalates as you start to appreciate the loving kindness you've received for years, scarcely noticing it. Ingratitude is the greatest cause of all evil. Oh, I didn't expect to say that, Lord. But I can see that's consistent with the way I've been arguing. I mean, proposing. Thank you.